I have to confess, if we were playing for $80, I might want to cut a 3 to beat a 2. If we were playing for thousands, I might want to try to get an ace. So you gentlemen are really the eyes of the audience. I want you to watch me very closely as I do what should be good, solid riffle shuffles, something that you would be happy to see within the course of your own game. I'm going to give them one more and then do what gamblers call a dead cut, which is literally trying to let my hands reach the deck and cut an ace. This is an acquired skill. And once again, please notice that there are no breaks or protrusions in the deck. There are no dog ears. I'm going to take the deck. I'm going to divide it very cleanly in half. I really am going to solidly shuffle the cards. And once again, I'm going to try to do what's called dead cutting an ace, to reach down into this part of the deck and cut out another ace. And by the way, notice if I cut even one card too few or one card too many, I would have not have cut an ace. By the way, this is also something I practice left-handed. That's in case someone breaks my right thumb. So let me try to cut the ace of spades for you. Left-handed, oh, lucky me. Now, those of you who follow the game would understand that each time I cut an ace, it's so much harder for me to cut the next one. This has something to do with the law of probability. So anyway, that's the concept. And once again, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to watch me narrowly as I shuffle the cards. And Jeff, I'm going to give the deck some cuts. At any point while I'm cutting, would you say stop?
Stop.
That's good. Be my guest. Put it on the table. You gentlemen have been doing very well. Can I induce you to stay for the postgraduate lecture here? Thanks. Tonight I've chosen 3 topics for discussion. First, card control, what happens when cards are shuffled and cut. Then I'm going to talk a little about false dealing. You've heard the term dealing from the bottom of the deck, probably. I'm going to discuss that. Then maybe end up with a demonstration of card stacking. But first, can cards be controlled? Well, yes. So I'm going to demonstrate how this actually might look. This is very strange. This is really a gambler's exercise. It's something that's distinctly non-theatrical in tone, but I hope you'd find it intriguing. So what I'm going to do, and again, these gentlemen are close by, they can see that I'm putting aces in the center of groups of cards at random, and then they are, at least for this second, out of my control. And what does that mean? It means it's an exercise in isolation, so there are many cards in between each ace. And yet, when I push them into the deck, I don't leave them protruding by a 1/16 of an inch or a 32nd of an inch. At least for the moment, the aces are out of my control. I mean, they're squared and they're in the center. They're not sticking out. How do I get them back in my control? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I get them in my control by shuffling. How do I shuffle the cards? Well, this is a complex issue. If I were a cheat, I would want to shuffle the cards in a way so I did not seem more clever or less clever than anyone else in the game. Let's say we were playing gin in Miami Beach and people shuffled in the old-fashioned way like this, then that's the way I would want to shuffle cards. If we were in a rather elegant New York bridge parlor, you might see someone shuffle the cards in this way and then do a little bridge afterwards. That's what that's called, a little flourish. But it's a simple riffle shuffle. If you're in Las Vegas, you wouldn't be allowed to shuffle cards like that. A pit boss would actually say to you, you must shuffle cards with them flat on the surface of the table. Why? They're afraid that if you put the cards in your hand, I could glimpse them or you could glimpse them. So this way, it's much more procedurally cautious for them. You would actually shuffle the cards like that. Then I'm sure you've all been to private games where people turn half the cards over and talk about, you know, Anaconda, Pass the Garbage, Alaskan Poker. And in this case, they're literally shuffling face-up cards into face-down cards like this, leaving a distinct mess of cards from various positions. Well, what does a cheat do? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you I've done this long enough that I can make 3 statements of absolute fact about the condition of the cards at this very moment. The first statement is, even though the aces were widely separated after all that shuffling, they are now together, one next to the other. The second statement is they're in the dead center of the deck. The third statement is, to make it easier for you to see them, I've straightened out every other card, so only the 4 aces are face up. So that's an example of card control, albeit a flamboyant example, but nevertheless. So how do you deal with this in a real situation? Let's say we're in Miami Beach. We give an overhand shuffle. We're now going to play some gin rummy. And now this should look serious and above board. 2 hands of 10-card gin. Turn over a knock card. Do you play a little gin? Good. What I've tried to do is deal my opponent a solid gin hand, but more than 30 unmatched points. So take a look with me and see if we've been successful. And you can see that there's a meld here and a meld here, but 2 kings and a 10 and a 3. That would be 33 unmatched points. I know this is a little technical for some of you. If you don't play gin, by the way, this is gin. That's the 987 of diamonds, 5555, and the 8766 of spades. I win. So, let's try some 21. I'm sure you play a little blackjack. Now, remember, if we're going to play 21, you're going to see me shuffling like you would in a Vegas casino. You'd see these strip cuts. I'm going to be like the house, which means I'm going to stand on 17 but hit on 16. You can make any choice you want. I'll even show you what I have.
I'll stand.
You're going to stand, okay. You have 18. I have 16, so I have to draw. So I'd be looking for a, well, 5 would make 21. Just like Vegas, huh? So, that's 21, sorry. Let's try another one. You could split on 5s, but it's much better to double down if you happen to have a pair of 5s, Larry. So, so that'd be 17 for you. And I won't get 21 every time. I have 8 and 5, or 13 and 6 would be 19, enough to eke out a minor victory. Try one more over here. Oh, I'm sorry, I gave you 3. Well, some casinos let you double down on a 3-card 11.
Oh, I'll double down.
Yeah, that's not a bad bet. So let's see, that's 17 again, and I have 10 and 4, 14, so I'd have to draw.
Bust.
Oh, grow up. 21. So, I'm sorry to do this to you. I always tell you they're sorry in Vegas, too. Now, look, if these cards aren't marked, and I tell you they're not, I mean, I don't know if you're going to believe me, but they're not, how does somebody do this? I think there are 2 things at play here. One is I have a very good memory, and the other is I kind of know what happens when cards are shuffled. Well, what does this mean? It means while we were playing gin, while we were playing 21, I was trying to remember where the aces were and leave them at various portions of the deck where I could find them. That's 2, 31 down, 3, and if I can go left-handed, let's see, that's 4. That's card control. We'll move on to the second phase here. I did tell you that I talk a little about false dealing. You've heard the term bottom dealing. Second dealing, is that something you've heard of? Yeah, you too as well, Larry? You guys have been around the block. Here's the way this works. If I had the ace of spades on top of the deck and we were playing in a game, I'd want to deal that card to Larry unless I didn't, which means that I wouldn't deal him the top card. I'd make it look like I was dealing him the top card, but I would be keeping it on the top. That's why it's called second dealing. It's an odd concept. It looks like the top card is coming off the deck, but in fact it isn't. So this is something that one could do, and this requires practice. Now, bottom dealing, some people say, is even a little more difficult. In this case, you'd place 4 aces on the bottom of the deck. And again, I want you to see that this is not an optical illusion. The aces really are on the bottom. What I'm going to be doing here, this works with 5 or 6 hands in the game, but in this case, I'm going to deal my opponents a card and myself a card. His cards come off the top. My cards come off the bottom. This is cheating. Now, the most elaborate form of false dealing is something called center dealing. This was literally unheard of 70 years ago. It's almost never been seen. And well, I'll actually tell you about its origins. In 1933, 2 men who I believe were the greatest card handlers in America, a man named Charlie Miller, who is living in El Paso, Texas, and a man named Di Vernon, a Canadian living then in New York, received a phone call from a mutual friend. And this guy said, there's a fellow out here in Wichita who can deal from the center of the deck. These 2 men hung up the phones, packed their bags, and left for Wichita. Well, what made 2 grown men travel so fast and so far? I'll try to explain in layman's terms. If I were going to deal 4 aces from the bottom of the deck, in any normal game, bridge or gin or canasta or poker, I would ask the person on my right, in this case Jeff, to cut the cards. So if the aces were on the bottom, you would be cutting them into the middle. So before I could deal them from the bottom, I would somehow have to nullify your cut. Now, this is possible. I could do the hop, the pass, the shift, saute, la coupe. But these are difficult maneuvers. And they're especially difficult because everyone's staring at your hands at that important part of the game. If instead I could leave the 4 aces anywhere in the deck and deal them by feel, this would be an enormous advantage. And that's why Charlie Miller and Vernon went to Wichita. And they knew the name of the man they were looking for was